My name is Whitley. I am 33, and I find hidden money for a living. You might think family would have more trust, but the one thing my mother hid from me was a locksmith van parked in our driveway. That was the morning she decided my 4-year-old daughter and I did not live there anymore. I came home from a 3-day audit to a brand new electronic lock, my clothes baking on the hot concrete, and my daughter's sneakers melting in the 110-degree heat. My phone buzzed. "Your room is your brother's now. Come get your stuff. Don't make a scene." I did not cry. My mother forgot that 2 years ago I saved this house from foreclosure. And I never throw away paperwork. By the night of her 60th birthday, a sheriff would walk right into her festive backyard and hand her an envelope in front of 40 stunned guests, explaining exactly what my paperwork meant. Welcome back, where the quiet ones keep the receipts, and boundaries are drawn in black ink, not raw anger. If you have ever been called the strong one, just so someone could hand you the short end of the stick, you are in the right place. Let me take you back to that Tuesday when it all fell apart, to who I was before. After my divorce, I moved back to Mesa, Arizona with Olive and a job that pays me to be highly suspicious. I am a forensic accountant and fraud examiner. Big companies hand me mountains of bank records and tell me to find the money someone stole. I am incredibly good at my job because I stay calm. I do not argue. I just reconcile accounts, which is quieter and always wins. When I needed a place, my mother Sharon offered me her spare bedroom for $1,200 a month. "Why pay strangers," she said, "when you can help family?" So, I helped. For 3 years, I paid on the first of every single month, exactly $1,200. No lease, just a handshake. But I also paid close attention. I knew which household bill was late and which due dates had teeth. My brother Brett lived 2 states away, contributing nothing because he was rebuilding himself, our family's term for a man between disasters. Every afternoon, I pulled into that scorching driveway, carrying my daughter past the spot where her sidewalk chalk had already faded. I told myself our living situation was temporary, believing my mother saw how much of the weight I was carrying. As an accountant, I should have known better than anyone how good people are at hiding what they do not want counted. I just never expected I would have to audit my own mother. The strangest part is that the warning was already parked in the driveway in white paint on the side of a van, and I drove right past it. In February, she announced her 60th birthday like a royal coronation. It was to be a huge backyard party with a rented tent and 40 guests. She handed me all the logistics, the caterer, the chairs, and the music playlist, telling me I was so good at those details. Then, she casually dropped the news that my brother Brett was moving back home. His car dealership had folded. His marriage fell apart right behind it, and a man like that apparently needed a real place to land. I asked the obvious question, where would he sleep? My mother just waved it off, saying we would figure it out. "You are the strong one," she told me, adding that I did not need this house anyway. She said it the way you would say the sky is blue, settled, not cruel, which somehow made it hurt worse. I let it go. But 2 days later, a white van sat in our driveway with Valley Lock and Key painted on the side. A man was on a ladder at the front entry. When I asked my mother about it on my way out, she did not look up from her phone, claiming he was just fixing a sticky back gate. But the front door is not the back gate. I knew it, and the math did not add up. But I had a flight to a client site in 90 minutes. It was a strict 3-day audit where personal phones are locked away the second you badge in. So I filed the wrongness in my mind where I store things I plan to come back to. I kissed Olive, told my mother I would be home Friday, and walked out the door, right past a man quietly making sure that front entry would stop being mine. I would return to find out the locksmith had not been working on the gate at all. Friday morning at 6:10, I drove straight from the airport to the house. The audit had run long. I had spent 3 days proving a corporate controller had funneled $40,000 through a fake vendor, and all I wanted was a shower and my little girl. I saw our clothes first, scattered across the front concrete. There were my shirts, Olive's booster seat, a split trash bag, and her light-up sneakers sitting in the sun, the rubber going soft and the little lights dead. I typed my code into the lock, but the keypad gave me 3 flat red beeps. I tried again. 3 beeps. It was brand new brushed nickel, still wearing the sticker. Suddenly my phone buzzed. "Your room is your brother's now," my mother wrote. "Come get your stuff from the lawn and don't make a scene." I read it twice in the rising heat, and my heart did not do anything dramatic. Instead, I felt that cold, clean calm I get when a corrupt spreadsheet finally confesses. I did not call her. I took out my phone and photographed everything. I photographed the lock, the sticker, the melting sneakers in the sun, and the timestamp on her text. I spent 11 minutes documenting the scene before letting myself feel a single degree of emotion. The first rule of my career is simple. You build the file before you build the case. I crouched on that scorching concrete in my audit clothes, framing a melted sneaker like it was critical evidence in a fraud case, because that is exactly what it was. My mother thought she was getting rid of me, but she had actually handed me exhibit number 1. My first call was not to a lawyer. It was to Olive. She was at a sleepover at her friend Maddie's house 2 streets over, and I needed her to stay put without getting scared. "Hi, baby," I said, keeping my voice light. "Mommy has a fun surprise. One more night at Maddie's?" "Okay," she cheered. Kids are mercifully easy that way. I began loading my car, putting her things in first. The sneakers, the booster, and the stuffed rabbit she cannot sleep without went in before a single item of mine. Across the street, our neighbor, Lorraine Pruitt, walked down her driveway in her robe, coffee in hand, watching the way neighbors do when they already know the gossip. "Whitley, honey," she said, "is everything all right?" I told her the truth in 1 sentence. My mother changed the locks while I was at work. Lorraine's mouth went thin. "I saw the locksmith Tuesday," she said, "and I saw your mother out here early this morning." I asked for her number in case anyone ever needed to know what she had witnessed. She gave me her number without asking why, which proved she had already guessed what happened. I sat in my hot car with the air conditioning fighting the burning dashboard and made 1 decision out loud to no one. Olive sleeps somewhere secure tonight. That part is not negotiable. Everything else, the rent, the house, and my mother, could wait. My daughter was not going to spend a confused night wondering why her grandmother's door beeped at her. I pulled out of the driveway, not knowing where we would sleep, but certain it would have a lock that answered to me. I had a witness now, standing in her bathrobe. That night, with Olive safe, I sat in a motel off Highway 60 with a legal pad and did what I do best. I added it up. 3 years of rent at $1,200 a month totals exactly $43,200 paid into my mother's account. No lease, no receipts, but a very clear trail. Because money always leaves a trail. That is why I have a job. My savings were thin. Paying a home's bills while paying rent will do that. I needed a deposit for a new place and furniture for a 4-year-old. The numbers were tight, but survivable. Here is the strange part, and stay with me because this matters later. I was not panicking. Most people locked out of their childhood home would be sick, but I felt patience. There was a reason for that. A move I made 2 years ago on a bad night that my mother had forgotten, but I had not. I am not going to lay it all out yet, because that is exactly how I lived it. Folded up, waiting, not needed until the moment it was. In that rattling motel, the only thought I allowed myself was this: she thinks she locked me out, but she has no idea what she locked herself into. I slept 4 hours, woke before my alarm, and started a folder on my laptop. At the top of the page, I typed one word, the same word I use at the start of every case I have ever closed: exhibits. By morning, I had 11 of them, and I had not even called a lawyer. I wanted to give her one chance, so on Saturday morning, I called. She answered on the 4th ring, breezy, as if nothing had happened. "Mom," I said, "changing the locks on a tenant is illegal in Arizona." A tense pause. "You're not a tenant, Whitley. You're my daughter." That was the excuse my mother used, completely ignoring the fact that I had paid her rent every single month for 3 long years. If you've ever had family weaponize love against you, you know exactly how this feels. She told me not to make things ugly, saying my brother Brett needed the space and that I was the strong one who could handle it. When I begged her to put my 4-year-old daughter Olive's safety above Brett's new home office, she told me I was being dramatic and hung up. 10 minutes later, Brett texted a thumbs-up emoji and a photo of my old room, already repainted, his monitor sitting right where Olive's toddler bed used to be. "No hard feelings, sis. The office is going to be sick." I stared at that photo, looking at the spot where my daughter's nightlight used to project stars across the ceiling. Now it held a gaming poster. I didn't text back. I learned long ago that the real winners are the ones who let the loud people keep talking. So, I let them talk. I opened a browser and typed 3 words I never thought I'd associate with my family: Arizona illegal lockout. The first result told me everything my mother had done wrong. By Saturday, my phone was a chorus of guilt trips. My Aunt Pat texted first. "Honey, your mother is heartbroken. Don't ruin her birthday over a bedroom." Then a cousin texted, saying they heard I moved out and left Sharon in the lurch, adding, "That is not like you." My mother had gotten to everyone first, of course. She spun a clean, heartbreaking tale where I was the villain. In her version, Whitley wanted her independence, and Whitley abandoned her family right before her big birthday party. Nobody called to ask for my side of the story. No one wanted to hear the version that involved a hired locksmith and a melted sneaker left in the heat. That is the power of a woman who has spent 60 years making sure everyone likes her. Her lies travel faster than the truth, and they always travel with refreshments. I felt that familiar, toxic pull to explain myself, to smooth things over and make everyone comfortable again. I even started typing a massive 3-paragraph text to my aunt with dates and evidence. But then I looked at my daughter's stuffed rabbit on the motel pillow and deleted the whole thing. My mother's weapon was the narrative she spun about me, but mine was going to be the cold, hard records I could prove about her. Let's be honest, those 2 things are not the same size and they do not fight on the same field. Gossip needs an audience hungry to believe it, but documents do not care who is listening. So, I let my aunt keep her comfortable lie I texted back just 5 words. Hope the party is lovely, Pat. Then, I focused entirely on my folder, a place where nobody else got a vote and nothing was edited to make my mother look good. On Sunday, I drove back to get the last of my things. I refused to leave Olive's books and my important work files sitting on the lawn for the recycling truck. My mother had dumped all of our lives onto the front walkway, right where the scorching Arizona sun was cooking the concrete. She stepped outside wearing a bright smile, aimed not at me, but at the neighbors watching from the cul-de-sac. "Just getting the last of her things," she called out to Lorraine, sounding like a gracious hostess. "You know how kids are, just cannot get them to launch." I refused to play my part in her theater. Instead, with Lorraine watching, I walked to the door and punched my old code into the keypad. 3 sharp red beeps echoed. I let the witness hear it. The small electronic proof that I had been locked out of a home I paid for. Through the window, I saw my old room, Brett's gaming poster and his desk. But out back, a new sign hung on the guest house door. Desert Casita, now booking. My mother was running an unlicensed short-term rental, throwing a paying daughter out to rake in cash from tourists. So that was her real motivation. It wasn't about helping Brett. It was about cold, hard cash. I loaded the last bag into my car and didn't slam the trunk. I shut it softly, the exact way you close a drawer you fully intend to open again very soon. My mother wanted a quiet, compliant daughter. But as I pulled away from the curb, I realized she forgot that quiet is exactly how I get right before I file a lawsuit. And that little sign in her backyard had just made my decision for me. Olive and I moved in with my coworker, Dana Foster, my mentor and the brilliant woman who taught me how to read a financial ledger like a confession. She had a guest room, a fenced yard, and absolutely zero tolerance for nonsense. That first night, after Olive was asleep, Dana poured us 2 glasses of wine and looked at me. "You unwind financial frauds worth millions of dollars for complete strangers every single day," Dana said, looking over her reading glasses. "So why don't you unwind your own, Whitley?" I sighed and told her it felt completely different when the person scamming you is your own mother. "It always does," Dana replied. "And that is exactly why people like her get away with it." Dana is too good at this. She didn't tell me I was being overly dramatic. Instead, she said I was underreacting professionally and that I needed to fix that immediately. Then, she did what real friends do instead of just giving useless advice. She made a phone call to a ruthless housing attorney downtown named Claire, who ate corrupt landlords for breakfast. "Bring everything," Dana told me. "The texts, the bank records, and that secret you're hiding." Dana had caught the shape of my secret without seeing inside. "There is a folder," I admitted. She clinked her glass against mine. "Good girls keep diaries, Whitley. Smart women keep folders." Stick with me here, because that was the moment everything changed. I slept wonderfully that night, knowing the locks on this door belonged to a real friend. In the morning, I booked an appointment with the lawyer, Claire. Then I called the only other person I trusted in this world, my grandfather, Hank Walsh. At 81 years old, my dad's father is the only person in our family who has never lied to me. I told him everything about the locks, the lawn, the casita, and my mother's perfect little lies. My grandfather was silent for a long moment over the phone. Then, he said the words that put absolute steel back into my spine. "That house belonged to your father, Whitley. Ray built half of those walls with his own 2 hands, and your mother only kept it because he passed away. Changing a lock doesn't mean she earned it a second time." He reminded me of something I had tried to bury. 2 years ago, when my mother almost lost that property, I was the one who stepped in financially to save it, and Hank had witnessed the whole thing. "I watched you save Ray's house," he said softly. "I signed as a witness because you did it the right way, the way your father would have. Do not let her tell people you were just a guest in a house you rescued." Hearing that, the heavy folder in my bag suddenly felt lighter. "She says I abandoned her," I told my grandfather. "She abandoned you on a driveway in July," he replied. "There is a word for that, and it is documented." Hearing my 81-year-old grandfather use my favorite word made me laugh. He promised to be at her birthday party on Friday because someone honest had to be there. The morning before my meeting with the lawyer, Claire, I gathered my facts. I pulled up the short-term rental listings and found it immediately. Desert Casita Mesa, sleeping 4. There were photos of the back unit, and in one shot, I could clearly see the edge of my old bedroom window. My mother was already taking bookings. She wasn't just rehousing Brett. She was building a cash machine out of my father's house, and she needed me out of the way. So I read the rules, because in Mesa, reading the fine print is the sweetest revenge. To run a short-term rental, you must register it, buy a transaction privilege tax license, and follow city ordinances. Plus, her HOA covenants flat out restricted rentals under 30 days. My mother had a listing, a sign, and guests, but not a single one of the things required by law. Sitting there with my cold coffee, I felt a clean, sharp calm. She built an illegal business in my childhood bedroom and forgot to read the terms. I read terms for a living. Let's pause, because I know some of you are living a version of this right now. The day I drove to the courthouse, I almost talked myself out of it, almost letting keeping the peace win again. If anyone has made you feel guilty for protecting yourself, sit with that. Then subscribe, because this next part shows what guilt looks like once it finally grows a spine. Okay, back to it. I printed the listing, the ordinance, and the covenants, sliding them into the folder. Then I grabbed the one piece of paper that changed everything and drove to meet Claire Bennett. Her office was just a folding table and 2 chairs in a legal clinic that smelled like burnt coffee and other people's emergencies. She looked to be about 40 years old. Claire was completely no-nonsense, the kind of lawyer who has seen every dirty landlord trick twice. I laid out the photos, the texts, and my bank records. She nodded along, unsurprised, until I got to the part where my mother changed the lock codes. Then she stopped writing. "In Arizona," she said, "a landlord cannot do that. Changing locks and tossing belongings is an illegal self-help eviction, even if she is your mother. Because I paid rent, I was a legal tenant, owed damages and attorney fees." I told her about the unlicensed backyard casita and the HOA covenants. She made a second column on her notepad, looked up, and asked the exact question all good attorneys ask, the one crucial question that separates a basic complaint from a real legal case. Claire looked across the table and asked if there was anything else tying me to that house, anything financial, anything in writing. I didn't say a word. I just reached into my bag and pulled out a cream-colored legal envelope, its corners soft from 2 years of waiting. I set it on the folding table between us. "There is this," I said. Her pen stopped moving the second she opened it. She read the first page, then the second, then looked at me the way one professional looks at another who has done her homework. "Whitley," she said slowly, "do your parents understand what they signed?" I didn't have to think about it. "No," I told her. "I don't think they ever read a single word. They just signed where I told them to." Claire set the pages down very carefully, the way you set down something heavier than it looks. Then she said, I need you to tell me exactly what this is. I told her exactly what was in that envelope and the desperate night it came from. 2 years ago, my mother called me at 11 at night, sobbing because the mortgage was 4 months behind. The bank had sent a letter with those terrifying words, "Trustee sale." She was on the verge of losing my late father's house. I had $26,800 saved up, money meant for a down payment on my own place someday. I wired every penny of it the next morning and stopped the foreclosure. But I didn't just hand her the cash and a hug. As a forensic accountant, I've seen 100 families destroy themselves over money that left no paper trail. So, I did it properly. I wrote a promissory note for the full $26,800, secured by a deed of trust against the house. A real lien, the exact same instrument a bank uses. I had the document notarized at a shipping store on a Saturday. My grandfather, Hank, signed it as our witness. After that, I recorded it directly with the Maricopa County Recorder, getting it officially stamped and filed. It was the only way. The way you record anything you want the world to honor. My mother signed every single page right where I pointed. She barely read it, feeling grateful, embarrassed, and desperate to move past the worst night of her year. To her, it was just paperwork to make the shame disappear, but to the county, it was a secured interest. So when my mother changed the locks on the house she thought was entirely hers, she forgot one critical detail. I wasn't just her tenant. I was a lien holder. I had been holding a recorded claim on that house for 2 years, and Claire was looking at the papers that were about to make my whole family sick. Claire set the note down on the table and started building our strategy. It was a plan of 3 distinct moves, each one entirely legal and completely quiet. First, we would sue for the illegal lockout in justice court for actual damages or 2 months of rent, whichever ended up being greater, plus all of my costs and fees. Second, we would send a formal demand on the deed of trust. That lien had been sitting quietly on the title since I recorded it 2 years ago, meaning it would surface in any title search the second she tried to refinance or sell. Our demand wouldn't create the problem. It would simply call the full balance due and make clearing my recorded interest the price of touching the house at all. Finally, we would file short-term rental and HOA complaints to shut her illegal casita down and start the fines. "Get me one more thing," Claire said. "I need any record showing exactly when that lock was changed. Intent matters." I already knew how to get it. I called Valley Lock and Key, gave them the address, and asked for an invoice for my records. The technician had logged the job, and the keypad itself kept a digital timestamp. The code was reset at 2:14 in the afternoon on the Tuesday I flew out for my audit. 2:14. While I was badged into a secure client site with my phone in a locker, unable to answer, my mother had paid a man to rekey me out of my life and write the time down for me. That little electronic timestamp, those 3 red beeps in reverse, was the cleanest exhibit in the file. Claire smiled for the first time all meeting. 3 filings, she said. 1 envelope. When do you want to serve? I thought about the calendar, the backyard full of guests, and everything my mother had taught me about due dates. Friday, I said. Let the law pick the day, not me. That night, I almost didn't go through with it. Olive was asleep in our borrowed room, her rabbit under her chin, while I sat on the edge of the bed, turning that envelope over in my hands. Enforce a lien against my dead father's house. Put my mother's name in a court file the week of her birthday. It felt for an hour like I'd become the thing she kept accusing me of. The cold daughter, the one who'd lawyer up against her own blood. I called Hank because my grandfather is my true compass. I told him I felt cruel. He let me finish. Then he said something I've kept close to my heart ever since. "Whitley, mercy isn't letting people rob you politely," Hank said. "Your father worked double shifts for that house so his kids would always have a door that locks for them, not against them. Olive is his granddaughter. You're not taking anything from your mother. You're keeping the promise she broke." I asked him if Dad would be ashamed of me for this. There was a long pause. The kind 81-year-old men have earned the right to take. "He'd be ashamed of me," Hank said, "if I let you talk yourself out of it." So, I stopped talking myself out of it. I put the envelope back in the folder, set the folder by the door, and slept. In the morning, Olive asked if we were going to live at Dana's forever, and I told her the truth, the calm version. "Just until I get us our own door, baby." Olive nodded like that was the most normal thing in the world. Children believe you when you sound like you believe yourself. So, I made sure I did. Then, my mother sent the text that erased the last of my doubt. She could smell it coming. She always could. On Thursday, she sent a message so long it arrived in 3 gray bubbles. She wrote about the cake she'd ordered, the cousins flying in, and how a real daughter wouldn't drag her mother through court the week she turned 60. "Do you want everyone to watch you do this to me at my own party?" she wrote. "After everything I've done for you?" After everything she'd done for me? I sat with that phrase the way you sit with a number that won't reconcile, staring at the screen and feeling the weight of her manipulation. And I let myself feel exactly how much she was counting on the same thing she'd always counted on. She assumed I'd rather swallow it than make a scene. She'd built her whole plan on my good manners. I typed my answer slowly because I wanted it to be the truth and nothing extra. "I'm not asking, Mom. I'm informing you. Send." 3 dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. Then, informing me of what? I didn't answer that. She'd find out Friday with the rest of the yard. "I will tell you because people always ask." No part of me enjoyed her panic. I'm not built for gloating. I find it loud and inefficient. But I'd spent 33 years rearranging myself so my mother could stay comfortable. And comfortable is exactly what let her dump my daughter's sneakers on hot concrete and call it tough love. The kindest thing I could do for both of us was to finally stop translating her cruelty into something I could live with. So, I put my phone face down and let her wonder all the way to her birthday. Friday morning before the party, I filed. Claire and I walked into the justice court together and handed the clerk the illegal lockout complaint, the photos, the texts, the bank records showing 36 months of $1,200 transfers, the lock log with its 2:14 p.m. timestamp. The clerk flipped through it and raised an eyebrow. "You brought more paper than most divorces," she said. "I count things for a living," I told her. Claire's office had already sent the formal demand on the deed of trust by certified mail, making the cloud on the title official as of that morning. We electronically filed the short-term rental complaints with the city and emailed the Homeowners Association the recorded covenants with the listing attached. 4 moves, 1 folder, and the same cream envelope sitting on top, soft at the corners, now wearing a case number on a sticky note. I signed where I needed to sign, and my hand was as steady as it is when I sign an audit opinion. That's the thing nobody tells you about doing it right instead of doing it loud. There's no adrenaline in it. There's just the quiet click of a process starting, like a meter finally running in your favor. Claire asked if I wanted to be there when it all landed. I told her I'd already decided I wasn't going to the party, because some things are better left to resolve themselves without me present. I wasn't going to give my mother the scene she'd accused me of wanting. But I said, "Send my grandfather Hank. He earned a seat in that yard. Then I went to pick up Olive because some Fridays, a 4-year-old needs ice cream more than her mother needs to watch a fuse burn down to the powder. Here's the timing, because the timing is the whole spine of it. Court papers in Arizona get served by a process server or the sheriff's civil division, and ours were set to go out Friday. The same Friday my mother had chosen months ago for her 60th birthday. I want to be clear about something because I've thought about it a lot. I didn't pick her party to humiliate her. I picked the first day the law would move, and the law's calendar happened to sit on top of her own celebration. If she did not want a sheriff in her backyard, she should not have changed the locks the same week she scheduled 40 guests. She taught me that lesson herself years ago at our kitchen table. Actions have a due date, she would say, and the bill always comes. Meanwhile, Brett made it easy to feel only resolve. He posted a video of his new office, showing my daughter's glow-in-the-dark ceiling stars he had not repainted, bragging the casita was booked solid. Booked solid with guests she had no license to host, in a unit her homeowners association forbade, on a house where I held a recorded lien. Every boast was just another piece of evidence. I shut off my phone, kissed Olive goodnight in the guest room, and laid out my work clothes for tomorrow. These were not party clothes. They were serious work clothes. On Friday, I would be doing the one thing I have always been good at, just closer to home. I would be present in my own way when the numbers finally confessed. I just would not be in the yard to hear it. Let me back up just slightly so you and I can look at what the family was hearing. 2 days before, my mother went to her church lunch and performed her best role, the wounded matriarch. A friend who still speaks to me reported it almost word for word. Sharon was dabbing her eyes over the potluck, saying her eldest daughter had walked out and broken her heart, wondering where she went wrong. Sympathetic heads shook, and casseroles were promised. Not one woman at that table knew there was a melted pair of toddler sneakers in this story. My mother is an editor of the highest order, cutting anything that does not flatter her. I did not try to correct the record. You do not win a gossip war by gossiping back. You win by being the one whose version comes with an official county stamp. The next day, I drove past the old house once on my way to drop Olive at preschool. The desert casita sign was up, and a cleaning crew stood on the driveway where my daughter's shoes had cooked 3 weeks ago. Strangers were sleeping in my father's house, in the rooms my mother had emptied of family to make room for cash. I did not even slow down. I looked at that house the way you look at a number you have already accounted for, and I kept driving. Olive asked why we passed Grandma's. I told her I was just checking on something. I was checking that I still felt nothing but complete certainty. I did. That weekend, while gently brushing Olive's hair, I asked what she remembered about her last days at Grandma's house. She told me cheerfully that a man came and took pictures of her room with a big phone, and Grandma said not to tell Mommy because it was a surprise. I kept brushing, keeping my voice as warm and calm as bath water. When was that, baby? She said it was before her trip, before I ever left for the audit. So my mother had not evicted us in a sudden heat of passion while I was away. She had a photographer in my daughter's bedroom days before sending that first text, staging it for paying strangers, coaching my child to hide it. That is not temper. That is a plan with a schedule. I felt a cold certainty settle in. I put down the hairbrush, turned Olive around, and told her the most important thing I know. You never have to keep secrets from me, ever. Even if a grown-up tells you to, not even Grandma. She nodded solemnly and then asked if we could have pancakes. We did, because that is how you end a difficult conversation with a 4-year-old. I heard it now, clear as a deposition confession. The whole thing was engineered while I was packing. My mother had not lost her temper. She had run a project, and projects leave a paper trail. My stepfather, Doug, called me Tuesday. He is 62, retired, and survived marrying into our loud family by agreeing with whoever spoke last. He never took my side, so I almost did not answer. But he did not defend her. He told me she had not slept since the foreclosure scare 2 years ago, waking up convinced the house was gone. He said losing Ray's house felt like losing Ray all over again. "She is absolutely terrified, Whitley," he pleaded. Doug said she thinks that if Brett is there making money, she will never be scared again. She thinks my promissory note is a knife at her throat. I let that sit, because while true, her fear does not excuse her. "It is not a knife, Doug," I said. "It is a door." She decided to call it a knife. I felt for her, but only for the length of that call. A woman so terrified of losing her house that she would throw her husband's granddaughter onto its driveway to feel safe. That is a real sadness, but it is no excuse. If this is hitting close to home, do me a favor. Share this with the one person in your family who always says to just keep the peace. Now let us get back to it, because peace was about to show up in my mother's backyard wearing a county sheriff's uniform. Doug sighed deeply before he hung up. "I told her not to touch those locks, Whitley," he said. I believed him, but I did not think it changed a single thing. And it did not. By Wednesday, my mother figured out something was wrong with her master plan, even if she could not pinpoint what. Brett desperately needed cash, and the casita required startup money. She went to refinance the house to pull equity out, except the title company ran a standard search and found my recorded deed of trust sitting on the property like a heavy hand on a shoulder. The refinance stopped cold. You cannot quietly borrow against a house when your daughter holds a lien. No lender will touch a property until the title cloud clears, and that cloud was me. My mother did the one thing she swore she would never do. She needed my signature. For the first time ever, she needed me. She called 11 times in one afternoon. My phone buzzed on Dana's counter, that flat, insistent vibration, and I let it ring the way her keypad had beeped at me, a sound that means you do not get in. I finally answered on the 12th call. She did not ask how Olive was. She snapped, "What did you do to my house?" "Nothing," I said. "I recorded what you signed 2 years ago. You tried to borrow against it." Then she started to cry, the performative kind, and I recognized that exact key. "Mom," I said, "I am not signing anything before Friday. After that, talk to my lawyer." I hung up gently, the way I close a drawer I plan to open again. She spent 2 years forgetting her bill, but it finally came due with interest on her worst week. On Thursday, my machine began to print. Claire called with updates in her flat, satisfying voice. The Justice Court docketed the lockout case. The Sheriff's Civil Division had our packet for service, the demand on the deed of trust included, to be delivered Friday. Best of all, the city of Mesa opened a code enforcement case on the unlicensed rental, which starts with a notice and easily balloons into heavy daily fines if ignored. Our homeowners association, armed with its covenants and my mother's listing, issued a cease and desist and ordered bookings canceled. By Thursday night, her listing had vanished from the site, replaced by the word every host dreads: unavailable. The income my mother emptied her family to chase was gone before she made a dime, killed by a paragraph she agreed to but never read. That is the pattern with her, and maybe all of us. We sign what protects us, forget it, and remember only what flatters us. I did not gloat to Claire. I just asked, Will my grandfather be allowed in the yard Friday if she tells him not to come? Claire laughed. It is a party in a backyard, Whitley, not a courtroom. Anyone she invited can stand right there and watch, Claire told me. I thought about those words. He is not going to watch, I said. He is going to witness. There is a massive difference, and that is the only reason I am sending him instead of going myself. You might think I agonized over whether to go to that party. I did not. The choice was easy, strategic, and honestly the most adult decision I have ever made. If I showed up, the narrative would write itself in my mother's favor. I would be the bitter daughter crashing her mother's birthday to cause a dramatic scene. But with me absent, I am just a silent name on legal documents. And those documents speak for themselves in a voice no one can call dramatic. So I stayed home with Olive, a frozen pizza and a cartoon movie. My grandfather Hank, 81, ironed a shirt and drove to the party he was invited to long ago. He went so that when it happened, an honest man would be in that yard to state exactly what he saw. That it was lawful, that nobody touched anyone, and the only weapon was paper. I will keep my mouth shut until I cannot, he promised. But if she calls you a thief in front of those people, I will tell them who signed where and why. I told him he did not have to defend me. I am not defending you, he said. I am correcting the record. Your father taught me the difference. He called me from the road with the noisy cul-de-sac in the background, party music spilling out. The lights are up, he said, and the tents are completely full. If you've ever had to make a choice that you knew would tear your family apart, you know the heavy silence of waiting. I sat on the couch, looking down at Olive as she slept soundly against my arm, and checked the time on my phone. The service window was 7 to 8 p.m., and it was already 7:40. Stay near the back, Grandpa, I had whispered to him earlier, and keep your phone turned on. My grandfather Hank narrated the whole scene to me later, slow and exact, the way he tells everything, and I have pieced it together with what 3 other people swore to. While I waited in the dark, my mother was holding court in her glowing backyard, under string lights in a rented tent, surrounded by 40 guests sitting in folding chairs she had made me reserve before she decided I was no longer family. Behind the party, the little casita sat dark at the back of the lot, its sign gone and its bookings dead, though the guests had no idea yet. At 7:45, my mother stood up, raised her wine glass, and tapped it with a fork until the yard went quiet. She gave a toast, and Hank quoted her words to me twice so I could hear them land. Family is everything, she said to applause. Through every hard year, this house has held us together. They all raised their glasses in a house I held a lien on, toasting a woman who had changed the locks on her own granddaughter. Meanwhile, my grandfather stood at the back with his jaw tight and his phone in his pocket, knowing the truth was about to speak for itself. My grandfather told me he was counting the cars in the driveway just to keep his hands from shaking. He got to 31. Then, at 7:48, a 30-second pair of headlights swung in slow off the street. They did not belong to a guest. They belonged to the county. Hank said you could feel the yard change before anyone understood why. A sheriff deputy in a tan uniform walked up, past the rows of cars, and the chatter under the lights died down table by table. The deputy stepped onto the patio and asked for Sharon Decker. My mother turned with her hostess smile still on, while Brett stood up too fast, laughing that fake car salesman laugh. "Wrong house, officer," Brett said, but the deputy did not even look at him. "Birthday girl," he said to my mother. "This is for you." There was no sound. No alarm. No shouting. None of those 3 harsh red beeps that had told me I was shut out of my own home. Just 40 people, frozen in a silent backyard, and my mother holding out her hand for an envelope she did not want. In a quiet so heavy, Hank said you could hear the citronella candles hiss. For 3 long weeks, a digital keypad had beeped me out of my life. Now, the loudest thing in that yard was the silence of my mother realizing she had been locked into something, and there was no code that would ever open it. She took the papers, her smile still desperately trying. "There must be some mistake," she told the deputy, her guests, and the warm night air. But he was already turning to go. "No mistake, ma'am," the deputy said. "You have been served." He left her standing under the party lights with the envelope in her hand, surrounded by 40 witnesses she had invited herself. My mother opened the envelope because she had to prove it was nothing, but it was not nothing. The first page was the illegal lockout complaint, my name against hers, showing the date she changed the locks and the 2:14 p.m. timestamp. The second was the formal demand on the deed of trust, $26,800 secured against the house. The third was the city short-term rental violation and the homeowner association's cease and desist. The casita was officially shut down in black and white. Hank watched her read those pages, watched the color drain from her face. Aunt Pat leaned over to look, and then she uttered the sentence that turned the backyard incredibly loud. "Wait, Sharon, is that the loan? Is she the one who saved the house?" You and I both know how fast a carefully constructed lie can unravel when the truth finally walks in. My mother's tidy narrative was about a cold daughter who abandoned her. It never mentioned the daughter who wired $26,000 at 11 p.m. to stop a foreclosure sale, and then quietly held the paper for 2 years. For 33 years, I had been cast as the strong one who did not need this family home. In 90 seconds, in front of everyone whose opinion she ever cared about, 40 people learned that the strong daughter was the only reason there was even a house left to lock her out of. My mother's hands were shaking. She looked up from the papers, found the empty space where I should have been, and grabbed the phone from her pocket. She dialed me right there in the yard, on a speakerphone she was too rattled to turn off. "How could you do this to your own mother?" she yelled, her voice climbing. "On my birthday, in front of everyone!" My phone rang at 7:52 p.m. I was on my friend's couch with my daughter asleep against me, watching her name light up the screen. I almost let it go. But I had chosen not to be in that yard precisely so I could handle this call like a professional. I answered it and kept my voice low so I would not wake my daughter. The noise of the party roared behind her. "How could you?" she cried, her words tumbling over each other. "A sheriff deputy, Whitley! At my birthday! In front of the whole church! What is wrong with you after everything? After I gave you a roof over your head?" I let her run completely out of breath. You do not interrupt a confession. You let it finish. When there was a gap, I spoke, keeping my voice low and even, the same voice I use to tell a chief executive officer that his partner has been robbing him. "This is not a scene, Mom," I said. "It is a court date," I went on calmly, because calm was the whole point. "You changed the locks at 2:14 p.m. on a Tuesday," I told her. "It is on the log. You threw my daughter's shoes out on the driveway in July, and the house you locked us out of, I hold the lien on it. I have for 2 years. There was a scuffle, and then Brett's voice came through, hot and angry. "You cannot take our house." I almost laughed. "I am not taking it, Brett. I am the reason you still have a house to fight over." Behind them, the whole quiet yard was listening. My mother, in her panic, had never taken me off speakerphone. 40 people heard every word rise from that tiny phone into the string lights. "I am not asking, Mom," I said gently. "I am informing you." I hung up, went back to the movie on mute, and held my sleeping daughter a little closer. What happened after that? My grandfather told me on the drive home, his voice steady the whole way. My mother stood in the lights, holding her phone and those papers, and she turned to the one person she thought would still rescue her. "Dad," she said to Hank. She had called him Dad for 35 years. "Tell them this is insane. Tell them what she is doing to me." And my grandfather, 81 years old, set down his glass and spoke so the whole yard could hear him. "I will tell them, Sharon," he said. "I sat at your kitchen table 2 years ago. I watched Whitley wire the money that saved this house from the auction block. I signed my name as a witness because she did it right," Hank said. "It was honest, recorded, the way my son would have done it. She did not take anything from you tonight, Sharon. She kept the only promise in this family that was ever written down." Nobody argued with him. You do not argue with the oldest, most honest man in the room. One by one, the guests found reasons to leave. Early mornings, long drives, a sudden need to be anywhere else, and the folding chairs emptied. On the gift table, between the wrapped boxes nobody would open now, sat that cream envelope, its corners soft, its 3 pages spread where my mother dropped them. The casita stayed dark, and the candles on her cake burned down to nothing. My grandfather walked past 40 empty chairs to his car and called to tell me it was done. That is how it all settled in the end. It is funny how we look for peace in the aftermath, and for me, it always comes back to the numbers. The Justice Court found the lockout illegal, awarding me damages and my legal costs. It was the exact statutory remedy Arizona allows for a self-help eviction, a heavy figure with my mother's signature on it. The deed of trust held, keeping the title clouded until she deals with me. That means no refinance, no quiet sale, and no cash machine for Brett. She is now on a repayment plan for the $26,800 she once cried over and never repaid. The listing vanished. Bookings were canceled, and that easy income died before it ever started. Brett packed up and moved out within the month. An office isn't much of a prize once the house is a court exhibit. Doug, to his small credit, told everyone he had warned her not to touch the locks. And the neighborhood gossips had a field day. Lorraine saw the sneakers left on the driveway with her own eyes, and Lorraine talks. By August, half the cul-de-sac knew which daughter had saved that house and which mother had thrown her out. I drove past exactly once more, dropping Olive at preschool, and the driveway was empty. No guest cars, no cleaning crew, just bare concrete cooling in the evening breeze. Strangers don't sleep in my father's house anymore. Neither do I. And that turned out to be a massive relief. Olive and I have our own place now, a 2-bedroom near Dana's. Nothing fancy, but the kitchen gets the morning light. I installed the lock myself, a digital keypad, because I have a sense of humor about these things now. The first time I set our code and it let me in, it gave 3 soft green beeps, the welcoming kind, the exact opposite of the 3 red flashes that told me I didn't belong. Olive learned the code before I even finished teaching it. "It's our door," she announced, and I told her she was exactly right. My mother called once after it was all over. She didn't apologize. That's not a thing she has in her. She just said she never thought I would actually do it. I had waited my whole life to understand that sentence, and there it finally was. The whole problem in those few words. I told her I knew, and that it had always been the problem. We do not talk much now. The door is not locked against her, but it answers to me, and if she ever wants in, she has to knock, like anyone else. I do not regret how it ended. Being the strong one was never a gift my family gave me. It was just the bill they kept handing me, and I finally read the terms before paying it again. That is my story. A locksmith at dawn, a sheriff at sunset, and a piece of paper I never threw away. If someone in your life keeps cashing your kindness, take this as your sign to read the terms right back. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next one.